It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Slovakia. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 25 on the players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Slovakia's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examined the participation of players in games over the recent period and a couple of other factors as well to categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and so on. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode, like all of the episodes in part one, have three sections. Section one, where we look at some general information on the team. Section two, where we cover the main candidates in each position and their likelihood of making it. And section three, where we summarize and have some concluding business. Before we begin, I want to show that I'm not completely off topic with my shirt here. This is a Euro 2020 shirt. And that's kind of as close as I can get here to Slovakia's colors. Even the blue is not really right because Slovakia's shirt is a darker blue. Although if you're looking at the YouTube version of this, you can see that I think this is a more current shirt, which had some lighter blue in it, but I can't justify that I'm on color here. Anyway, let's begin with section one. And that begins with a look at some of the retiring big names. And we have, first of all, Marek Hamšík, who retired not only from the international football team, but from the club play here. So he was with Slovakia from 2007 to 2023. He did actually play this year in this period, but we'll get to that. He retired with 138 caps and 26 goals, and he was part of their World Cup 2010 squad. He was the captain there, and in 2016 and 2020 Euro Cups, which pretty much covers all of the tournaments that they played recently. So he actually did start two of their 12 games from 2023 onwards, but retired during that period, so is not available to them here. I suppose there's always a chance of coming out of retirement, but I doubt it. Because I'll just point out he's 37 years old, so maybe a bit too old for that. Next, we have Thomas Houbekan. Thomas Houbekan played from 2006 to 2021 with 73 caps. He's still active in club soccer with Žilina, even though he's 39 years old, so it's maybe not too old for Marek Hamšík. And he was part of the Euro 2016 and 2020 squads. He announced for the second time his retirement after they failed to reach the World Cup in 2022. So Thomas Houbekan not available to them. Vladimir Weiss also, his international career spanned 2009 to 22, and he has 77 caps and 8 goals, and he is still active in club soccer. Also part of all three tournaments, though a substitute in Euro 2020, and he last appeared for the national team in June 2022. So Vladimir Weiss also not really a consideration for this tournament. Finally, we have Michael Duris, He played from 2012 to 21 with 59 caps and 7 goals. And he also is still active in club soccer and part of the Euro 2016 and 2021 tournaments. So he retired or last appeared for the national team in 2020 and announced his retirement in 2021 from the national team. Okay, next we look at club affiliations to try to get a sense of Slovakia. So they really have some veterans with the team. Despite those retirements, a few have kept on. So Martin Dubravka, something of a veteran, not so much so, but with one of their top club affiliations with Newcastle United there. In defense and midfield is where we see most of the veterans that remain. So Milan Skriniar, the captain, probably has has by far the top club affiliation with Paris Saint-Germain. And Peter Pekarik is the most capped player remaining on the team. He's 37 years old, but still going with 126 caps. He plays for a team that's kind of typical of the level of teams of the Slovakian team, especially the A team, Hertha Berlin in Germany. So not a top club, but probably kind of middle or lower end of the top division. Those two players. We'll look at a couple of players in the midfield. We don't want to dwell too long on it, but Juraj Kuka, also 37, has 106 caps, and Andre Duda, 71 caps. Duda is with Hellas Verona in Italy, and quite a few players do play in Italy. Kuka is with Slovan Bratislava, and we'll look at the top Slovakian clubs right away here. Stanislav Lobotka also in defense, 54 caps, and with Napoli. So those players really do have some of the top club affiliations. The top clubs in Slovakia, about a third of the players play for these clubs, or else for top clubs, or else for clubs in Czech Republic, including some of the top clubs there. So we're looking at Trenčín in Slovakia, Slovan Bratislava, and Zelina. In Czech Republic, Slavia Prague and Sparta Prague. Two of the biggest clubs there. And as I said, Hertha Berlin, kind of representative. Several players do play in Germany, but not for top teams like Bochum and Hertha Berlin. And then in other countries too, Boavista in Portugal, Samsunspor in Turkey, and Robert Mack, also a veteran with Sydney FC in Australia. Okay, that's a look at their club affiliations, and we move on to talking about their recent games. So we're examining the participation of players from the start of 2023. Slovakia played 12 games over that period. The first 10 of them were qualifiers for this competitions, and the last 2 were friendlies. So we do see some changes in the friendlies, which actually confuse the issue a little as to who are the starters, because they seem to be trying out some of the bench players, especially in the last friendly there. In terms of participation over international competitions, we kind of covered it when we talked about some of the veterans, especially Marek Hamšík. They participated in the 2010 World Cup. That was their only recent World Cup, and Euro 2016 and 2020. So it looks like the expansion of that tournament, kind of brought them into the fold. They hadn't participated in any Europe. We only go back to 2008 here, so I'll say from 2008. Okay, let's go to their formations, and this is a very short discussion, blessedly simple. It is a 4-3-3 formation 100% of the time, or in all 12 games. They use the 4-3-3 formation. So that makes this section nice and short. And so we can move on to our last section and look at their friendlies. So these are their warm-up games coming up. The first one is against San Marino, and that actually takes place in Austria, so in a neutral location. The second, that's on June 5th. The second is a bit more difficult. It's against Wales at home. So we can see there are a couple of questions to be resolved, as you'll see going through this. So I'm anxious to see kind of these probably will indicate who's going to be starting in the cup. Okay, that's the end of section one. Let's move on to the main section, the candidates for the squad, and we begin with the manager. And we'll do a little history because it's interesting, and just to kind of set the stage, as it were. Their manager is Francesco Calzona, and he is an Italian. He has been manager since 2022. Interestingly, at the same time, he's appointed manager of Napoli in Italy since 2024. So I'm surprised the Slovakian FA kind of let that happen. So anyway, however that works, he's manager of Napoli, and he has been with Napoli in other capacities twice before, once as a technical coach and once as an assistant manager. And otherwise, his only experience is as assistant managers at various teams in Italy. So since 2008 to 2022, he was 2021, he was only ever an assistant manager. Then he was technical coach of Napoli, and now manager of the Slovakian national team. So kind of odd. Even as a player, he is almost comically lacking in experience. He only played 3 games as a professional footballer, Francesco Calzona. Nevertheless, he did a good job leading them through qualification to get here, and we'll talk about that in the summary of the position. So a little history of the managerial situation over the last little while. Pavel Happel was the manager who saw them through qualification for Euro 2020, and keep in mind that that tournament was postponed until the summer of 2021. However, Pavel Happel was fired when in the 2020-21 Nations League season, Slovakia lost a game at home to Israel. Stefan Tarkovic, that's the only other manager we'll talk about here. Stefan Tarkovic replaced him, but couldn't prevent their shameful last place finish and relegation to Nations League C. Stefan Tarkovic went on to manage them in the actual Euro Cup tournament, despite Happel being the one who got them there. And in that tournament, they won their opener against Poland, but then lost the next 2 games. Game 3 was a bit of a humiliating 5-0 loss to Spain, and they failed to pass the group stage. Nevertheless, Tarkovic stayed on and led them through a reasonably competitive World Cup 2022 qualification, where they finished a distant 3rd behind Croatia and Russia. And he stayed on until June 2022. But when they lost their second game of Nations League C play at home to Kazakhstan, he was fired. Calzona came in and tried to salvage that campaign, but he couldn't. They finished 3rd in Nations League C, and they remained there, languishing down in League C. Calzona, though, did lead them through a successful qualification for this cup. After a shuddering opening home draw with Luxembourg, they won all of their games after that, except for losing their 2 matches against group winner Portugal. So there we have the managerial situation, Francesco Calzona leading them through. Let's go to look at our candidates for goalkeeper. We have Martin Dubravka and as a definite candidate, and Marek Rodak also as a definite candidate. And we have Heinrich Ravas, a likely candidate, and Dominik Takac as a possible but unlikely candidate. We also have Dusan Kusiak as a player seemingly off the squad. Now, if you are following the if you're looking at this on YouTube, you'll see that some of the names are in black and some are in grey and light grey. So if their name is in black, that means they have tournament experience. If it's in light grey, it means they don't. And if it's in kind of medium grey, like Dusan Kuciak there, it means they're retired from the national team or haven't played for a significant amount of time. And I'll deal with Kuciak right away here. That is the case with him. He was a backup keeper in Euro 2020, but hasn't appeared for the national team since November 2021. So let's look at the more viable candidates. The first definite candidate, Martin Dubravka, is 35 years old, and he has 41 caps since 2014. And as we saw in the section 1, he's with Newcastle in England since 2018. With Sparta Prague in Czech Republic before that. Despite starting with the team in 2014, he was not selected for Euro 2016, but he was the starter in the Euro 2020 campaign, and he has since started 10 of their 12 games since the start of 2023, on the bench for one and not selected for another. Marek Rodak is also a definite candidate. He's 27 years old. He has 21 caps since 2020, and he's been with Fulham in England for 10 years, since 2014, loaned out to some lower level clubs over that period, and not a starter for Fulham. He was a backup keeper in Euro 2020. And he started 2 of their games over this period, on the bench for 10 others. The 2 games he started, though, were right at the end, 2 of the last 3 games. So I don't know if that constitutes a challenge for the starting position. We'll maybe talk about that when we get to the summary. Anyway, always called up, and that's why we have Marek Rodak as a definite candidate. Next, the likely candidate, Heinrich Ravas. He is 27 years old. He doesn't have any caps for Slovakia, and he plays for New England Revolution in the USA since 2024, and was in Poland prior to that. He got his first appearance on the bench in November 2023, and he didn't start any of their games, as we saw, but he was on the bench for all 12 matches. So Heinrich Ravas likely to be called up to the squad, though not likely to be seen on the pitch. Dominik Takac is possible but unlikely. He had been off the team for 18 months when he returned in March 2024. Didn't start either of their remaining 2 games, but was on the bench for one, and then not selected for the last match. So possible showing up right at the end there. And this is not the first time we've seen kind of 4 keepers. So we think some teams may be bringing 4 keepers to the cup. And in that case, Takac has a chance. If it's just 3 keepers, though, it looks very unlikely. Let's summarize the position. Dubravka started 10 of the matches, and Rodak started 2 of the last 3. And as we said, we don't think it really represents a challenge for the starting position, but it might be. But we do see this situation in other positions. So I'm actually thinking the last game of qualifying, as they seem to have put on some experimental players, really bench players, and also in the last game. So may have been using those 2 games to kind of bulk up the backup players. On to defense, and we're looking at central defenders. So I'll just talk about the position a little bit. It's always a 4-3-3 formation, so we're always going to see two central defenders, despite the three-man backline being a bit fashionable these days. Not for Slovakia. It's always just two. The candidates are actually, one of them is David Hanko, but we're moving him to left defense because that's where he's been playing. So we begin with Denis Vavro, a definite candidate, and Captain Milan Skriniar, also a definite candidate. We have Norbert Jomber as our third definite candidate there. Then we don't have any in the likely category, so we move down to the possible category. Lubomir Satka, who is actually an injury out. We'll talk about that. We have Adam Obert, Sebastian Kosa, and Thomas Nemchik, also an injury concern. And then seemingly off the squad is Martin Valiant. He was a substitute. He was selected for Euro 2020, but just on the bench, sometimes not even on the bench. And he last appeared for the team in September 2023. Maybe he should be possibly unlikely, possible but unlikely, because that's fairly recent. But we have him as seemingly off the squad here. Maybe because there's so many players kind of ahead of him. Also, we have Thomas Hubakan, who is well retired now, but he was in this position and was a starter in Euro 2020. So they have had to replace him. Okay, let's go back and look at these candidates. I should actually put Skriniar first. And I'll move him up the list and begin with him. He's 29 years old and captain of the team. And he has 66 caps and 3 goals since 2016. He also has the biggest club affiliation on the team with Paris Saint-Germain in France since 2023 and Inter Milan in Italy for 6 years before that. He was just a sub in Euro 2016, but a starter in the 2020 Euro Cup, and he has since started, since the beginning of 2023, 8 of their 12 games. He was out with 2 separate injuries for the 4 others, although he has recovered from those injuries. So Milan's Skriniar, a definite candidate. Next is Denis Vavro. Vavro is 28 years old with 19 caps and 2 goals since 2017. So that kind of limited number of caps over the last 7 years is kind of shown in his Euro 2020 participation. He was selected, but he was on the roster and saw no action there. And in fact was off the team for a while. He returned after a 21-month absence. That's almost 2 years. Returned in March 2023, but then started 7 of their remaining 12 games and was on the bench for 2. So just 3 matches that he wasn't selected for. And 2 of them were due to injury. That was for the last 2 games, though, but he has since recovered. But we didn't lower him because of that. We didn't lower his likelihood because of that injury. A, because he's recovered, and B, because he seems an important player. So we're sure he'll be back. The third definite candidate is Norbert Jomber. So he's 31 years old with 38 caps and no goals since 2014. And he plays for Salernitana in Italy since 2020. He did play for Roma in Italy too. And I should actually go back and because I forgot to mention Vavro's club history. Vavro is with Copenhagen in Denmark, his second spell with them. and also played with Lazio in Italy before that. Okay, back to Norbert Gjomber, and he was selected for Euro 2016 as substitute in that tournament, but not selected for the squad in the 2020 Euro Cup. Since the beginning of 2023, Gjomber has started 6 of their 12 games, and he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 4. So not always a starter. In fact, he does seem more of a filler player, to be honest, although he fills quite a bit, starting half the games. But always called up, so we have him as a definite candidate. Let's look at the first of our possible candidates, Lubomir Sapka. He was a starter in Euro 2020, and he has 33 caps and 1 goal for the national team since 2018, and he's 29 years old, playing for Samsunspor in Turkey since 2023. He also had a spell with Newcastle in England, just like the goalkeeper Dubravka there, and he was with Newcastle's youth club too, Lubomir Sapka. He started 2 of their 12 games over the recent period, on the bench for 4. However, he was out for surgery with the last 2 and not selected for 4 others. So we do have him as a possible candidate, but that ankle surgery started in early April. That situation was since early April, and he is not expected back until June 30th. So despite being quite possible as a candidate, Lubomir Sapka is going to be out for this tournament. Next, we have Adam Obert. Obert is 22 years old, and has 1 cap for the national team. He plays for Cagliari in Italy, and got his first appearance in March. No, I'm sorry, I'm mistaken there. He got his first appearance in November 2022, actually on the bench. But then he was kind of off the team. He got 1 substitute appearance back there in November 2022 and was off the team for 16 months. He returned in March 2024, did Adam Obert, and started both of their remaining 2 games. You know, this recent participation gives him a good chance here. We still have him as a possible candidate. Sebastian Kosa is our next one, and he is 21 years old, and he got his first appearance in March 2024, and it was the last game there, and he was subbed into it, so that gives him his 1 cap, and he plays for Spartak Trnava in Slovakia. Sebastian Kosa, then a possible candidate. The last one is Thomas Nemchik, and maybe we won't go into too much detail on him because he is an injury concern also. He is out with an unknown injury since late May and an unknown return date. This could be a recurrence of a hamstring injury that had him out from late April to mid-May. He came back for 1 game for his club, and then he was injured again. The second injury labeled an unknown injury. So Thomas Nemchik looking quite doubtful here. And those are the candidates. So let's go back and look at the position. That's actually a lot of candidates for a position that only a few players here actually play. So Vavro and Skriniar are the most common combination there. It did take 2 games to arrive at that combination, and Gjomber started in the first 2 of those matches with a different partner each time. Anyway, Vavro and Skriniar continued until near the end, but in the last 2 games, it was Gjomber and newcomer Obert So once again, we don't know if they were just trying out new things in the friendlies or whether that means there are changes afoot. Anyway, in all of that, our possible candidate Lubomir Sapka managed to get 2 starts in there, but he will not be available for this cup. Okay, over to left backs, and here we have a definite candidate in David Hanko, who is primarily coded as a central defender. We're going to see this a couple of times. Slovakia doesn't really have a deep bench or a lot of players to choose from. So in a couple of positions, they're very thin and they need other players, out of position players to fill the role. So I don't know if that's true with David Hanko because he is secondarily coded as a left back. Anyway, we're dealing with him as a left back because he has played that position here. The only other candidate is likely candidate Vernon DeMarco. So let's go back and introduce these players. David Hanko is 26 years old, been with Slovakia since 2018 with 37 caps and 4 goals. He plays for Feyenoord in the Netherlands since 2022. And he was selected for Euro 2020 there. He appeared only as a substitute in 1 game. He, though, has started 11 of their 12 games since the start of 2023 and was subbed in for the 1 other. So David Hanko, a definite candidate here. As a defender, he also did well to score 2 of their goals in qualifying. Next, we have Vernon Marco, the likely candidate. He's 31 years old and quite new to the team here since 2021 with 7 caps and 1 goal. And he's playing for a team in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, called Hatta. So that seems like a bit of a retirement move. He had been with Slovan Bratislava in Slovakia for the 6 years before that. DeMarco has not started any of their games, but he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for all the others, 11 matches there. So Vernon DeMarco, the backup here, always called up. So we have him as a likely candidate. Okay, let's summarize the position. So again, the 4-3-3 formation, it's always going to be a left back and a right back playing. In other words, we don't see a formation where these positions push up to become wingers as they do in some other formations. All right, so we don't see any really viable starters coded here. So it's out of position players, an out of position player taking the lead. Central defender David Hanko started all games except the last one, a friendly where he was replaced by DeMarco. So quite straightforward there. And let's go to the right side, the right back position, and look at the candidates. We have Peter Pekarik as a likely candidate, and Michael Tomic, also a likely candidate. Matus Kmet, a possible candidate, and Martin Koscielnik. We put him in the retired category because he's been off the squad for quite a while. He was a substitute in Euro 2020, but hasn't appeared for the national team since June 2022. So not likely, not expected to show up here. Okay, let's look at the candidates. Peter Pekarik is 37 years old and has 125 caps and 2 goals since way back in 2006. So he's been part of all of their tournaments, the 2010 World Cup and 2016 and 2020 Euro Cups. And over the recent period, he started 9 of their 12 games. Sorry, I forgot to mention his club. It's Hertha Berlin in Germany, and he's been there a long time, since 2012. But yes, as I was starting to say, still very active with the national team, starting 9 of their 12 games over the recent period. They're subbed in for 1 and suspended for 1. and not selected for the last match. But again, we don't really. Again, at 37 years old, that could mean something. But yes, and it did force us to regard him as a likely candidate rather than a definite one. Okay, next we have Michael Tomic. He is new to the team since 2023 with 5 caps. He's 25 years old, though, and he plays for Slavia Prague in the Czech Republic. Currently on loan, though, to Mlada Boleslav, also in Czech Republic. So Tomic got his first appearance in March 2023, started 2 games and subbed in for 3, and was on the bench for 5. And just 2 matches that he wasn't selected for. That had us putting him as a possible candidate. However, Tomic is out with a muscle injury from mid-May, so a fairly recent injury there, and an unknown return date. So he may not be available for this cup, and we might be able to update that in part 2 of our look at when the squads come out. Okay, Matas Komet is 24 years old, no caps for the national team, and plays for Trenčín in Slovakia since 2020. He got his first appearance just recently in March 2024, and just was on the bench there. So Matas Komet may be making a late bid for entry, and his chances improved with the injury of Tomic. So really could be a likely candidate here. Okay, let's summarize the position of right back. It too is straightforward. Pekarik started 9 of the games, and Tomic here replaced him twice. And then the only complication is central defender Gjomber replacing him once on the right defense. Okay, that is the end of defense, and we look upfield to the midfielders, starting with defensive midfielders. Well, here's another position where they really don't have any candidates. So let's introduce the one that is there. It's Jacob Hromada, and he is seemingly off the squad. No, he is we'll call him retired. Actually, he shouldn't be here at all. He was a starter in Euro 2020, but hasn't appeared since November 2021. So Jacob Hromada well off the squad here. So that's all they have for players coded as defensive midfielders. But in the 4-3-3, there's really not a distinction between defensive and central. So actually, I will talk a little about that position. 4-3-3. So we're going to actually separate it into just the central, the very center of the pitch, the central midfielder, and then we're going to have separate categories for the left midfielder and the right midfielder. So we're just looking for one position here, and we'll look at the candidates. We have a definite candidate in Stanislav Lobotka. And we're moving a few candidates out to left and right midfield. So we'll get to some of the names you might be expecting here. We have a likely candidate in Patrick Rosowski, and 3 possible candidates in Matus Barrow, Thomas Rigo, and Dominic Hawley. A possible but unlikely Jacob Kadak, and a seemingly off the squad Christian Herc. Okay, we'll take a look at these players, beginning with Stanislav Lobotka. He's 29 years old and has 52 caps and 4 goals since 2016, and he plays for Napoli in Italy since 2020. He was selected for Euro 2020, but he appeared only as a substitute in 1 game there. However, he has become a starter since, starting 10 of their 12 games over the recent period, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1 other. So Stanislav Lobotka, a definite candidate here. Next, the likely candidate, Patrick Hrosovsky, and he's 32 years old. With 53 caps and no goals since 2014. He plays for Genk in Belgium since 2019. And he was a starter in, or at least in two of the games in Euro 2016, but just a sub in Euro 2020. Nevertheless, called up for both of them. Over the recent period, though, he's only started two of their 12 games. And he was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 4. So actually the one match that he was not involved in, he was suspended for yellow cards. So Patrick Hrosovsky, always called up, probably a definite candidate here, despite not really being a starter. Okay, the first of our 3 possible candidates, Matu Sparrow. He's 28 years old with 30 caps and 1 goal since 2016, but not selected for either of the 2 tournaments. He was on the preliminary squad for both of them. He plays for Bochum in Germany since 2023, Vitesse in the Netherlands for 5 years before that. And Matu Sparrow didn't start any of the games. He was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 2. And he was out with 2 separate injuries for 5 of them. And then not selected for the last match. So Matu Sparrow, just a possible candidate here. Thomas Rigo, also a possible candidate. He has no caps for the national team. He's 22 years old and plays for Baník Ostrava in Czech Republic. Got his first appearance for Slovakia in March of 2024 and didn't start there, but was on the bench for both of those games. So he kind of has the recency benefit that forces us to consider him a possible candidate. Finally, Dominic Holly, also no caps for the national team. He's just 21 years old and plays for Jablonec in Czech Republic since 2024. That's a recent move. He was with Trenčín in Slovakia before that. Dominic Holly got his first appearance in October 2023 and didn't start any of the remaining 6 games, but was on the bench for 4 of them and not selected for 2 others. So also a possible candidate. The possible but unlikely candidate is Jacob Kadak, and first appeared for the national team in October 2023, was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1, and then not selected for the other games, including the last 2 matches. So we consider him unlikely, although he did get his first cap in 2024. Jacob Kadat plays for Luzern in Switzerland since 2022 and was also with Trenčín in Slovakia before that. Christian Herc last appeared for the national team on the bench in June 2023, so doesn't look like a candidate here. And let's go back now and summarize the position in the center of the 4-3-3. The position was played by a central midfielder, Lobotka, 10 times, and Hrosovsky got 2 starts. Hrosovsky 2 starts, but Hrosovsky, his 2 starts were in 2 of the last 3 games. So there we see that pattern again. And we are going to see it again still. So again, that doesn't really feel like a challenge to Lobotka's position, but it might be. And we'll really have to look at the June games to see if there is a change in the making there. Okay, let's go over to left midfielders in the 4-3-3. We have candidates Andre Duda as a definite candidate, and we have Laszlo Benez. Laszlo Benez, a likely candidate, and Marek Hamšík as the retired candidate, but he did play during this period, But we are going to say he's retired because he has retired from club soccer as well. So not much chance of a comeback here. Let's look at the candidates. Andre Duda is 29 years old, and he has 69 caps and 12 goals since 2014. He was a sub in Euro 2016, but a starter in 2020. Andre Duda has started 9 of their 12 games over the recent period, and he was injured for 2 of them. So a definite candidate, Andre Duda. And I didn't mention his club. He plays for Hellas Verona in Italy since 2023 and with FC Cologne in Germany prior to that. Okay, Laszlo Benez is 26 years old. He's our likely candidate here. He has 20 caps and 1 goal since 2017 and plays for Hamburg in Germany since 2022 and Borussia Mönchengladbach prior to that. Also in Germany there. And he was selected for the Euro 2020 squad, just a substitute in that tournament, and seems to be more of a substitute now. He did start 3 of their 12 games over this period, but was subbed in for 6 of them. And the only games he missed, he wasn't available for through injury and illness. So Laszlo Benez, a likely candidate here. We talked about Marek Hamšík in the retired section, but actually he did start 2 of their games during this period. They were in June, and then he did not appear for the national team after that. So a big loss for them there. And we'll summarize the position of left midfielder. So mostly it was Duda in this position, playing 7 of the 12 times. We saw that Hamšík played 2 games early in the period in June 2023. And Benez came in 3 times. Again, this is twice over the last 3 games. So we see that pattern again. And I don't think it represents a challenge to the starting player. Anyway, Benez, at least the backup for this position. Okay, over to the right side of the field, we have Juraj Kuka. I have put those players in the wrong spots. I'm just going to take a moment to fix up my graphics on the YouTube part here. Okay, so on the right side of the field, we have a definite candidate in Juraj Kuka. Robert Mack is actually coded as a right midfielder, but didn't play here. So we're going to move him to the position where he did play. That's as a left attacker. And we'll meet him a little bit later. And then the only other candidate, or the only other player that fits into this, is the retired Vladimir Weiss, who's been off the team since June 2022. So Juraj Kuka, the only candidate here. Let's take a look at his biography. He's 37 years old, so we do see a couple that age on the team. Been with Slovakia since 2008 with 106 caps and 13 goals. And plays for Slovan Bratislava in Slovakia, so moving back to Slovakia since 2022. He was with Parma in Italy prior to that, but on loan to Watford in England. So he has been around. Probably his biggest club affiliation is AC Milan in Italy from 2015 to 17. Kuka was part of the World Cup 2010 squad, started as a sub but earned a starting position there, and was a starter in Euro 2016 and in 2020. And still a starter. He started 10 of their 12 games over the recent period, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for the other. So a definite candidate here, and really the only candidate on this side. we'll see in the summary of the position here that Kuka played the position 10 times. When he was not there, he was replaced by Duda, who we've just met on the left side, and Duda is primarily on the left side here. So just an out of position player kind of filling in when Kuka is not there. All right, we move upfield to the left attacking position. We've kind of created this position just to organize our media cast here, and it includes it includes various positions, but since Slovakia always plays a 4-3-3, this position will solely be the left forward position. Okay, so let's look at the candidates. We have Lucas Haraslin as a likely candidate, and Robert Mack, also a likely candidate. And then we have Leo Sawyer as a possible candidate, and Lubomir Tupta, a possible candidate as well. So let's go back and look at these, introduce these players. Lucas Haraslin is 28 years old, with 34 caps and 5 goals since 2019 with the national team. He plays for Sparta Prague in Czech Republic since 2022 and was in Italy prior to that. He was selected for Euro 2020. He started a couple of games there, games 1 and 3, and he recently has started 7 of their 12 games on the bench for 1 and out with 2 separate injuries for 4 others, but he's not on the injured list here, so looks ready to play. Lucas Haraslin, a likely candidate. The other is Robert Mack. He's 33 years old. Been with the team since 2013 with 81 caps and 16 goals. As I said in the intro, or in section 1, he's with Sydney FC in Australia since 2022, and he's really been around playing in Hungary, Turkey, Russia, England, Greece, and was with Manchester City's youth club there as well. Robert Mack was part of the Euro 2016 and 2022 squads, a starter in both of those. However, he was off the team just before this period in 2022, basically. He returned in March of 2023 after a 16-month absence, and then he started 6 of their remaining 12 games, subbing in for 2 and on the bench for 3, so just 1 match that he was not selected for. So we have Robert Mack as a likely candidate here. The first of our 2 possible candidates are Leo Sawyer, and he is just 19 years old, and I thought he was 18, but he was born in 2005 anyway. He plays for Feyenoord in the Netherlands since 2023, and he got his first appearance in March of 2024, just recently, and didn't start either of those games, but earned his first cap as a substitute in one of those games. So Leo Sawyer, a possible candidate here, very young. The other possible candidate is Lubomir Tupta, and he is 26 years old. He's been with Slovakia, though, just since 2023, with 4 caps for the national team. He plays for Slovan Liberec in Czech Republic, actually his second stint with them. In between his 2 stints, he was with Pescara in Italy briefly for a year. In his recent participation, I'm losing my thread here. He got his first appearance in June 2023 and didn't start any of the remaining 9 games, but was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 2. 3 of the matches he wasn't selected for. So Lubomir Tupta, a possible candidate. And I should also add that David Duris is on this side as well, but we moved him to the right side because his only start has been on the right. So we'll catch up with him later. Let's summarize this position of left attacker, or specifically left forward. Haraslin and Robert Mack alternated in the position, but Haraslin did get a few more starts here. Attacking midfielder Suslov, who we'll meet soon, did get one start here. And both Suslov and Robert Mack we're also going to see on the right side right away here. But we have them on the left because that's where they primarily are. Okay, right attackers then. We have a likely candidate in the player we just mentioned, Thomas Suslov. He's actually coded as an attacking midfielder, but we're moving him here because that's where he's played. We mentioned that we're moving David Duris too. He's not actually to be mixed up with Michael Duras, who's an attacker or who's a forward on the team. This is David Duras, a likely candidate. We have Ivan Schranz as a possible candidate. And we have Eric Jurka as a possible but unlikely candidate here too. So let's look at these players. First, Thomas Suslov. He's just 21 years old, but he already has 26 caps and 2 goals for the national team since 2020. He plays for Hellas Verona in Italy. That's a recent move in 2024. He was with Groningen in the Netherlands for 4 years before that, and with their youth club as well. Suslov was part of Euro 2020. He subbed into a couple of games there, a bit of a surprise selection. But he is integrating into the team more and more, starting 5 of their 12 games here, subbing in for 5 others, and not selected for 2 matches, including the last match, though. So that's a bit of a concern when players miss matches close to the cup. But we don't really think that's significant in this case. So Thomas Suslov, a likely candidate here. We didn't move him down a notch because of that last match miss. Okay, David Duras is 25 years old, just 11 caps and 1 goal. He joined the team in 2022. He plays in Slovakia with Zelina and has since 2018. However, he was loaned to Ascoli in Italy in 2024 here. And Duris started one of their 12 games over the recent period, subbed in for 7 and on the bench for 1. So just 3 matches that he wasn't selected for, and that's why we have David Duras as a likely candidate. Ivan Schranz is 30 years old, but late in joining the team, just since 2020 there. But he has got 21 caps and 3 goals in that time. And he plays for Slavia Prague in the Czech Republic and has played in that country for quite a while. He was part of the Euro squad there in 2020. He was on the roster, but not on the bench for any of the 3 games. Just quickly, I'll say they brought, I can't remember exactly, but they are allowed to bring 26 players, but only 23 players to the bench. So there were players who were on the roster, but didn't even make the bench. So it seemed like Schranz was one of those. He's actually coded as a forward, it's Schranz, and he started 5 of their 12 games over the recent period. He was on the bench for 1. But then he was out with 2 separate injuries, including for the last 2 matches. He has recovered from that now. But in addition to missing those games through injury, he also was not selected for 3 matches. So actually looked like he was making good inroads into the team, as you'll see shortly. But then at the end kind of drifted off the team. So Ivan Schranz we have as just a possible candidate The possible but unlikely candidate is Eric Jurka. He didn't start any games. He was subbed in for one and on the bench for two, and not selected for 9 matches there, including out through injury for the last 2 matches. So a possibility of him coming back, but doesn't seem likely. All right, let's look at the summary of the situation. So once again, we have a position where there are no players coded for that position. So it's slightly out of position players who are stationed here. Suslev, an attacking midfielder, and David Duras, a left winger, and Schranz, a forward. So not seriously out of position, but it does speak to the kind of the shallow pool that Slovakia has to choose from. On this side, Suslov, Schranz, and Mack each started 2 of the first 6 games, so kind of seemed a rotation among the 3 of them. But then Schranz played 3 in a row, so it looked like he was taking over the position. However, Suslov returned and played the next 2. And then in the final game, it was David Duras starting there again, not to be confused with the forward Michael Duras. So this position seems fairly unsettled. Okay, we move on to our last position in the midfield, central attacking. However, the 4-3-3 does not employ this position. However, we do have players coded as attacking midfielders. We've moved them all to the positions they actually appeared in. So that's Andre Duda. We moved him to left attacker. Thomas Suslev to right attacker. And Marek Hamšík we talked about also as a left attacker. So we move on to forwards then. We don't have any players coded as secondary strikers. So we go to actual centre forwards. That is, okay, here are the candidates. Robert Bozanek as a definite candidate. We have Robert Polievka as a likely candidate. No players in the possible category here. We have David Strelak as possible but unlikely. Adam Zrelak as seemingly off the squad, and Michael Duras as a retired player. He last appeared for the national team in Euro 2020, so he has been off the team for a long time now. And I'll just deal with Adam Zrelak here too. He last appeared for the national team in March 2023. So really not in the picture here. Let's go to the main candidates then. Robert Bozanek, he's 24 years old, and he's been with Slovakia since 2019 with 39 caps and 6 goals. He plays for Boa Vista in Portugal since 2023 and Feyenoord in the Netherlands before that. He was selected for the Euro 2020 campaign, but he didn't see any action in that tournament. He has, since the beginning of 2023, though, starting 6 of their 12 games, subbing in for 4 and on the bench for 1. Just 1 match that he was not selected for. Robert Bozanek, then, a definite candidate. We actually do have Ivan Schranz here, but we've talked about him as a right attacker, which is where he played. So we go to Robert Polievka, also a likely candidate, or he is a likely candidate. 27 years old is Polievka, with Slovakia just since 2023, with 9 caps, though. He got his first appearance in March 2023. He started 6 of their remaining games and subbed in for 3. He was on the bench for 1, but not selected for the last 2 matches. So we moved him down a rung because of that. But Robert Polievka still seems like a likely candidate, partly because of the lack of candidates here. We have David Strelak, and he didn't start any of their games over this period. He was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 4, but he wasn't selected for 7 matches, and that includes the last 2. So still possible, but unlikely, we think. All right, that's the candidates, and we'll summarize this position. Polievka started the first 5 matches. Bozanek increasingly challenged for the position, though, and ended up playing the last 4 of them. So over the period, it was even, I think, 6 games each. But Bozanek looks the more likely, having started towards the end there. All right, that completes our look at the players. So we go back to, we move to section 3. Any closing thoughts on the players? And a couple of closing thoughts. One is the lack of depth in the squad. And so we see just really a couple of candidates in some positions, and actually some positions that don't really have players coded for that position. So we see some out of position players playing. The other, maybe the age of the squad. We see a lot of veterans here that might serve them well in this cup because they're used to playing together. They know each other. However, it looks like Slovakia is really going to need to do some renewal after, and we don't really see the younger players coming through and getting starts on the field. So definitely something Slovakia will have to look to going forward. We're going to race through the squad and see if we can nominate any definite starters here. And so let's begin with the manager. Quite inexperienced as a manager, Francesco Calzona, but nevertheless, they won't be changing him at this point. For goalkeepers, we have Martin Dubravka. He's clearly the starter. In this and some other positions, we do have some backup players playing 2 of the last 3 games. That's the case with Marek Rodak. But we don't think that really constitutes a challenge for the starting position, although it might, and we'll have to look at the June warm-up games to get a better idea. Anyway, Marek is the backup. Marek Rodak is the second string keeper at least, and that's pretty clearly established here. Okay, in defense, I'm going to put Milan Skriniar and Denis Vavro in blue here because they're the likely defenders, but there has been some change, especially the fact that the last 2 games were started by Gyomber and Obert, our possible candidate. Again, we're not really sure if that means anything or whether they're just giving those kind of secondary players some game time. Gyomber has started half of the games, but still seems more of a filler, kind of filling in positions rather than being a solid starter himself. In the left back position, it is definitely David Hanko. He's actually primarily coded as a centre back, but playing in left back over this position. And again, that kind of speaks to the lack of candidates in that position. Next, we have Peter Pekarik, and I'm going to nominate him as a starter here, although a bit less convincingly so than Hanko. Okay, let's move on to the midfield. So always a 4-4-3-3 for Slovakia, and so these positions are quite well defined as a central, a left, and a right midfielder. In the center, Stanislav Lobotka seems to have nailed down the position, so we can fairly confidently highlight him. Again, Rosowski coming in for a couple of games at the end, but we don't think that constitutes a challenge for the position. We may be wrong, though. Left midfielders, Andre Duda. I think we are going to nominate him as a starter. He doesn't start all the games, actually, just 7 of them. So, but he did start 2 on the other side. So I'm going to say that he's a starter. And Juraj Kuka, the 2 games, Duda started 2 of the games on this side. Kuka started all of the others. So those seemed the main candidates. So a fairly steady midfield with those 3 players, Lobotka and Duda and Kuka. And we expect to see them starting. Attacking midfield, we have Lucas Harrislin and Robert Mack kind of alternating in the position. So we're not really confident enough to name one of those. And Benez came in at the end. So we're not really sure who's going to be the starter there. So we move over to the right side. I just want to kind of confirm in my notes that what I'm saying is correct. Yeah, okay. So on the right side, Suslov actually seems the most likely here, but Ivan Schrantz looked like he was taking over the position at one point. But now was off the team for the last 2 games. So I'd have to say this is kind of undecided too. Again, the June games might shed some light on that. Up front, well, I'm going to actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to, yes, I am. I'm going to highlight Suslov in blue as a likely starter. There. Okay, in the forward line, it's really a rotation between Bozenik and Polievka, except Bozenik started most of the games towards the end. So I'm going to highlight him in blue as a likely starter, kind of equivocating here, but that's the case. He didn't start enough for us to think that he's a definite starter. Okay, that's our run through the team. Let's move on to the second order of business here, the review of injuries. So we have a few injuries here, and I'll actually start with the more likely players. So Michael Tomic, we had as a likely player. He's a right back. And he's out with a muscle injury from mid-May and an unknown return date. So we'll put him in the unknown category, but that's a fairly recent injury, so a bit dubious that he will come back. Centre-back Thomas Nemcic was a possible candidate for us here in a bit of a strange situation, out with an unknown injury since late May and an unknown return date. But he had a hamstring injury that put him out from late April to mid-May. He played 1 game for his club and then was out with this unknown injury. So it could be a recurrence of that hamstring injury, but he's also unknown. And then we have 1 player who we know to be out of contention. That is our possible candidate, Lubomir Sapka. He was out with ankle surgery since early April and not expected back until June 30th. That would be around the end of the group stage there. So we're going to say he is really not in contention for making this tournament. Okay, that brings us to the end. So we finished just with a preview of part 2, which we will do when the final squads are decided and the final, and we know who the players who made the team are going to be. And at that time, we'll kind of go through the list that we created here and point out any notable non-selections, so likely or definite players that don't make the squad. And then any surprise inclusions, including new players, and there could well be a couple of those on the team here. And yeah, that's what we'll do in part 2, so we hope you join us for that. We would like to thank Mike Tripak, Big Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this mediacast.